Bible Church, how is everybody today? Good. That is so good to hear. Did everyone see the beauty of the mountains and the snow has returned? Is anybody dreading winter right now? Okay, just a few hands. I guess that's good for Montana. Well, thank you all for coming today. And we know that it is the Lord's will for you to be here. And I want to start out just by praying and asking and calling your attention that today's message is so vital and important for everything that you are seeing on the news, hearing on the news, watching even in your everyday life, what you might even see in your schools or in your jobs. Because if you do not rest in the one simple truth that God is your refuge now and forever, then you are going to fall into the chaos that comes. And we don't know what's coming. We have no idea what can happen next week. We don't know what the next person in the government is going to say, what Biden is going to tell us. We have no clue about what we are going to hear about and have somebody in authority tell us how we need to be living. But we do have the authority on how to live. And that comes from the very word of God. And so you might be here with many questions, uncertainties, not knowing what to think about going into school tomorrow, not knowing what to think about traveling, or even just going back to work. But today's message is to give you a peace, a true peace, and a hope for tomorrow. Because that is what we have in the Lord. God didn't come to die on the cross and say, well, good luck with this chaotic world. I'll see you when you get to heaven. Did he do that? No, he said, my peace I leave with you. I leave my peace with you. So that means you do not have to live day to day in insecurity. You do not need to live day to day with misunderstanding, because your true understanding, your true security only and ever has been in the Lord and his word. Any other security you had in your life, whether it's your past, your present, or some security that you hope to experience in the future, if it is not from the Lord, it will not secure you. You will be left in wanton chaos without Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. And I can't remember exactly when, but a couple months ago, Pastor Jared and the leadership team were discussing what does this church need to be. And he came on a Wednesday night and he showed us exactly what we need to be. And that's why I've chosen this for our slide this morning. It's on your bulletins, but it is so critical. This is the perfect example of what the church is for you and for me. We want to be that lighthouse. We want to be in the midst of the sea with waves over 100 feet tall smashing against us and unmoved. We want to have the comfort of what that lighthouse has on the inside. Some of those lighthouses actually have oak paneled walls, oak flooring, mahogany. It's beautiful. It looks like a castle on the inside. And it was built for those lighthouse keepers that would stay out there for months at a time when those were run off of oil to make sure they stay lit for the ships so that they wouldn't smash into the reef and the rocks. But is that not a beautiful picture of what the church should be in this exact moment of our nation, of our time? That gives me so much hope. Why? Because many of those lighthouses were built before 1900. So they have stood there for over a century with all those waves smashing against them just like that. And they have not fallen down. It's not only a testament to how well they were made, but it's a testament of the icon of the picture of what it shows us. That God's word is a lighthouse to our hearts, to our souls, and to our lives. And as we study Ruth right now, that's exactly what she needed. That's exactly what Naomi needed. And remember, we've talked so often in our church that women, right? This is Pastor Jared's analogy, are wine glasses. Beautiful, crystal, delicate wine glasses. And guys, you're just a Yeti cooler. I mean, they test those things on bears, and there's a reason why you should be the Yeti cooler. Because you should have your wife wrapped around in that Yeti cooler with a bunch of cotton, a bunch of nice soft clothing, to where even if a bear is trying to open it up, that wine cooler is not, or that wine glass is not being broken. Isn't that beautiful? That's exactly how it should be in marriage. That's exactly how it should be as a church. And that's exactly, ladies and gentlemen, the message that we need today. Because ladies, how many of your peers in the world actually feel secure in who they are? In everything that they have in life. How many of them are content with their life? Or are they being anxiously driven day after day with all the cares and worries of the world? And it might be that she's a single lady. Well, that single lady has a father. He can still care for her and love her and protect her, yes, even if she's living on her own. And if there's a single lady in the church without a father, then our church is here to care and protect for that person. And that is exactly what women need. You are a wine glass. It is God's will that you are sitting here in the church. And you need that protection. If your own father didn't do it, Jesus always has. Do not forget the good graces of God that have lasted and persisted throughout every day of your life. And young men, raise your hand. Yeah, all of you are young. None of you are over 30 yet. I'm the only one, okay? Well, except for a few. Sorry, gentlemen. But you just look so young. Young men, do you need protection from your pastors? Do you need protection from your own fathers? And if your fathers have not given that to you, we are here. That is the protection that the church is to provide. Has it done that? I don't think so. There is too much chaos in the church alone to show that the church has actually stood amongst the tests and trials of our time to love and protect all of its people. And so as we read Ruth, remember the amazing protection that God has given to us, that God has shown us. We're going to start in verse 18, reviewing really quickly what Pastor Jared went through last week. 18, it says, she took it up. Let's just stop there. What is it? It's all the barley that she harvested in one day. How many, or how much rather? Enough for at least 2 weeks of wages. So can God provide, church? He provided for Ruth for 2 weeks in one day. You're going to see by the end of this chapter that he provides for her in a way that is beyond what most of us can understand. It's an amazing thing what God can do. And we need to remember the very fact of why God is doing this. Look back at verse 12. Just a quick review. This is Boaz speaking, and he says, may the Lord reward your work. Okay, your wages be full from the Lord. Does he do that? Oh yeah, right? He does that. And it says, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to seek what? Refuge. Can you seek refuge in the Lord? Yes, always and forevermore. Anytime you seek refuge in anywhere else, does it ever work out for you? No. But we as humans always try to find a way of refuge in any way other than the Lord. We get caught many times way out in the ocean, drifting along, thinking that our great boat is going to save us, and we smash into the rocks, and we're lost in a chaotic time. God is your refuge and your secure foundation, just like the song we just sang. That is what we need to hold on and remember. Ruth is whom? She is a Moabitess, meaning she comes from a foreign land of foreign gods, but she dedicated herself to the God of Israel. And we don't get the full detail of her salvation. We don't get all the intimates of when and how that happened. But we know it happened because of this text showing her faithful love. And in Hebrew, that means hesed love. The same love that God gave to the Israelites all through the Old Testament. She is exemplifying that love for us. She clung to Naomi and would not let her go. They walked 10 days through the desert. And I actually looked up, I have a picture, but I didn't load it today. So you just have to take my word for it. When I say desert, it looks like a desert. Like if you just think giant sand dunes and mountains that look brown, that's all it was. 10 days. How they survived? God's hand. I don't know. We don't get those details of how much provisions they had and whether or not they just made it without any water. All we know is that God sustained them. So 10 days through the desert to a very foreign land that she had no idea about. Which, remember, Israel was actually an enemy of Moab. They were historical enemies since early in Genesis and Exodus. And so she knows she's going back to a place faithfully loving Naomi, but to a place that could very well reject her. And then she gets up and goes to a field, not knowing what can happen, knowing she has no status in that society. She could be taken advantage of and violated in an instant, and nobody would give a second thought to that. She had no husband, no fatherly authority over her. But what do we see in that text? That God had a plan behind the plan. When Boaz speaks to her and says, "You have come under the wings and sought refuge," and he tells her that I have heard throughout town of what you have done for your mother-in-law. And he gives her more grain than she can eat at lunch. And he gives her more grain than normal for gleaning. Shows not the nice kindness of Boaz. It shows God's hand working in that time, working in the heart of Boaz, a kind gentleman, yes, but working to live in a way that is honorable and caring for all the needy. And so it says she took it up and went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also took it out. That it refers to the leftovers from lunch, and gave Naomi what she had left after she was satisfied. Go back. That word saw That's kind of an important word, and we might skip over it. But think about this. I'm going to use names. Ruth took it up and went into the city, and Naomi saw what she had gleaned. And last week, we heard from Pastor Jared, it was between 30 to 40 pounds. Do you think that's a pretty heavy weight for a lady to carry? I do. I mean, it's a heavy weight for me to lift up. But think about the amount. And one day, she's carrying a sack of grain on her back. Naomi sees that. Remember, she left that morning, and now she's back at the end of the day, and she sees that sack of grain, and what do you think is going through her mind? She's shocked. She's like, how did that happen? Somebody just like give her that sack? Like, there's no way a single person can work that hard and get it. And we see that shock in 19. What does Naomi say? It reads, her mother-in-law then said to her, where did you glean today? Where did you work? May he who took notice of you be blessed. Is there any greeting? Like, Ruth, how are you? How are you feeling? Is there any traditional greeting? Remember, this is a time where people would greet each other very traditionally. They would look you in the eye, say your name, and say hello, and greet you in a way. I mean, we see that from Boaz earlier when he greets the reapers. He at least says, may the Lord bless you. So when Naomi just jumps right to the point, like, what happened? Where did you work? Like, this is insane. It shows the shock. It shows that she was not expecting what is going to happen happens. She didn't think and expect that there would be that much grain to come back in a single day. And Ruth says, we'll read on. So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked and said, the name of the man with whom I work today is Boaz. And stop there. Does Ruth know who Boaz is? A close reading of the text. This is, a nod to the author at how subtle this is. But Ruth has no idea what happened her entire day. As readers, of course, in verse 1, now Naomi had a kinsman of her husband, a man of great wealth, of the family of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. We get that information. Ruth doesn't. Remember, she's just living the life, trying to figure out what to do. And she goes out, gleans. She knows who Boaz is. She can probably tell he's very wealthy. And she can tell he's an honorable man of integrity. But she doesn't know that he's related to Naomi. So think of the integrity of Ruth. This is really important. Boaz and Ruth took steps of faith all that day. Boaz had no necessity of giving anything in the way he did to Ruth. He knew he wasn't going to give in return. And the reapers during that time would not reap into the far corners of the field. They would leave that for the poor to go and glean. But what did Boaz do? He pulled the sheaves, or instructed his reapers to pull the sheaves out of the stalks out of the sheaves, and leave them on the ground so that Naomi would be able to reap extra than what was necessary. So think about that in relationship to your life right now. You might feel that you are under a hot desert sun, working your knuckles to the bone and really not reaping very much. Does anybody feel that way right now? That you are constantly going at it. Your routine starts at 6 a.m. in the morning and finishes at 6 p.m. at night. And you get home and you eat and you can barely pick yourself up to go to your own bed because you're so tired. And sometimes life gets that way. Or your kids get sick. And it's like every night, one of them, not all of them, can get sick at the same time. Have you noticed that, parents? Your one kid gets sick, and then your next one, and then the next one. And then if you have a few more, it goes in a line, and it's never like all of you are sick once, and then you get cured and you're good to go. It's like one after the other, and it wears you down, and it sucks the life out of you. Not because you don't love your kids, it's just you're not sleeping, you have to work still, you have to do these other responsibilities, and before you know it, 2 weeks goes by, and you're like, geez, I didn't even think of what was going on. That rest, that peace of the Lord escapes you so fast. But God has always been providing. Look what he did with Ruth. And she didn't even know this guy she's standing in front of is the very guy, obviously she wouldn't know she was going to marry him, but it's the very guy that could save her and Naomi from total destitution. And I'm going to read the rest of the chapter, and then we'll come back to certain points. But it's clear, it's really important that we look at this. Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed of the Lord, who has not withdrawn his." That his is the Lord's kindness, okay? It's really important that you notice that. "To the living and to the dead." Again, Naomi said to her, "The man is our relative. He is one of our closest relatives." Some versions say kinsman redeemer. Okay, to us at this point, we're like, well, so what? He's an uncle. He's like there. Remember, Israelite Judaic law stated that if there was a widow, there would be a kinsman redeemer to support and supply their needs in whatever way that was possible and appropriate according to the law. We'll see next week what that looks like and what's acceptable. But in this moment, all Naomi is really saying is, we're saved. We're saved. You don't realize who you're talking to. But Ruth goes on to say, Ruth the Moabitess said, "Furthermore, he said to me," that's Boaz, "you should stay close to my servants until they have finished all my harvest." Circle that word, all my harvest. Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his maids, so that others do not fall upon you in another field." So she stayed close by the maids of Boaz in order to glean until the end of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest. And she lived with her mother-in-law. This story is amazing. This story should shock your socks off. Think about this. What we just read, look at the change of how Naomi even refers to Ruth. Really quickly, the narrator calls Ruth the Moabitess. But Naomi says in verse 22, "It is good, my daughter." Now in Hebrew, that word can still refer to daughter-in-law, but it's also used in other areas as daughter. When it says, before that, Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, daughter-in-law is a totally different Hebrew word than what it says in daughter. That daughter-in-law always refers to daughter-in-law. And now, this is the second time Naomi has referred to Ruth as daughter. Do you think she appreciates her a little bit more? Because she doesn't use that word daughter-in-law. She says daughter. And remember, she has absolutely no relationship, no connection to give to Naomi. It was unnecessary, but it's her hesed love. And that is the example that we have. And so we see the plan of God unraveling in a way that is more beautiful than we could even imagine. It is more precious than we even in our hearts allow ourselves to appreciate. Think of Naomi. She had lost her father or her husband and 2 sons. She walked back a widow, absolutely no expectation of anything. But she was faithful to confront any of the gossip that came to her head on and live in true integrity. But that didn't lead to any salvation for their physical needs. And now she gets to see her daughter-in-law come home with a 30 to 40 pound sack of grain that will feed them at least for 2 weeks. And she hears that comes from her daughter-in-law, Ruth, stumbling onto a field that is actually owned and operated by the one person that could redeem them. How many details in your life are you overlooking and forgetting about because you're too stressed or too anxious or too distracted even to pay attention to what God is doing in your life? Church, does God always work his plan, or does he just put his feet up in the lazy boy chair and then get to work for a day or so, and then put his feet back up and then get to work for a day or so? God is always working. And it's not just to work for your demise, for your end. It says God is always working for your good. This story shows that. We don't need to always just have something told that to us. That's the beauty of narrative. And in literature, the best way to tell somebody something is to show it through action. So do you think Ruth is a superbly beautiful piece of literature? Oh yeah. It's true history and true artwork. This is amazing, folks, that we can sit in our Bible. And how many of you talk to people and are like, oh, I don't read that Old Testament stuff. It's so boring. There's so many like names and stuff that I could barely pronounce. And all these boundary lines and stuff they talk about that just takes forever, and I just gloss over it, and it's all this law that means absolutely nothing to us now. Well, no, that law actually does mean something to you, because Jesus came to fulfill the law and show what the law, true intentions were. Do you know that the true intentions of the Hebrew law was simply to show that you couldn't do anything to not sin? That's what it was for. So God put all this law, all these festivals, all these things together to remember the Lord, to do God's commandments, just to show the humans, specifically the Israelites, but also the people that would read it, yeah, you can't do it. There's just no way. And if you take the time to read through the first, say, 6 books, 7 books of the Bible, and just think, okay, God's giving a law that's supposed to prove that it's just making me know that I'm a sinner. And then what do the Israelites do? And then what does God do? And every time, God comes back and saves them. Every time. That's why it's so important. You got to read your Bible. And you got to know this and appreciate the beauty of this book. Some of you might not know this, but I studied literature for 4 years in college. Then I went back to college like a knucklehead because I didn't plan right in the first time. And I studied for another 2.5 years to teach literature. Like, I don't have my doctorate, folks. I just like going back to school. I don't know, it's weird. And degrees and stuff never really meant anything to me. I really do just like to learn. But I studied literature for 6.5 years. And not one of those silly university classes would measure up to this book. Not one. Because it is so precious. It is so wonderful. And it is ordered so beautifully that you can't help but appreciate what God is doing. And so in all your dark days, in the past, in the present, and going into the future, does God have a plan for you? Yes. Has he always had a plan for you? Yes. So don't get bogged down in the details of they said this and then they said this, and so I need to maybe do kind of like both things and hybrid them together so I can live my life freely. It never works. God has a plan for you to live for him, to live by the conviction that he has placed on your life, because that conviction frees you. And is that not what you see in Ruth? She was convicted to go with Naomi. And now she has stumbled upon a field of the man that will save them, that she will eventually marry and have a son that will become part of the line of Jesus Christ himself. And she couldn't have even tried to organize that guy and figure that one out. There's no possible way. But I'm digressing. Let's go back to the text because I'm getting too excited about just talking of it. Look at how Naomi changes in verse 20. Naomi says, "May he be blessed of the Lord who has not withdrawn his hesed love to the living and to the dead." Who's the living? Naomi and Ruth. Who's the dead? Naomi's husband and sons. And remember, sickly and wasting away, not very good names, right? You would read that and go, well, they're not blessed. Oh, really? Because they're being blessed by the Lord here just a chapter later. And that hesed love breaks Naomi's despair. Look at how she changes. Look at what she does. She goes, this is our relative. Holy cow. He's the one of our closest relatives. And then Ruth tells her, he said to me, you should stay close to my servants until they have finished all my harvest. Do you know what that means? What's the harvest period? It's 2 to 3 months of harvest. That's a long time. I'm sure the farmers are here like, geez, they were slow. Like, it takes me like a month to get everything done. 2 to 3 months. What does that mean? 2 to 3 months of a job. What did Naomi just bring home on one day? 2 weeks. So if every day she brings home that same amount, do you think that's going to get them through a long while? Oh, yeah. And God did that. Well, it's not working today. Maybe this hand. There we go. He did that in an instant, folks. He wasn't like, no, you trudge around. 10 days wasn't enough for you in the desert. You need to spend like a couple weeks getting your feet underneath you and figuring all your life out, and then I'll bless you. No, he, in 1 second, all she did was say, mother-in-law Naomi, I'm going to go out and I'm going to work in the fields, and we're going to see what the Lord does. She comes home with 30 to 40 pounds of grain and a job for the next 2 to 3 months. Do you think after 2 to 3 months they're going to say like, we're done, good luck? Not with that sort of testimony. The Lord sustains you. He will always keep you. But remember, that worship of God, and what do you mean by worship? They didn't break out into song and dance, Pastor Nick. No. Naomi says twice in verse 19, may he who took notice of you be blessed. And in verse 20, may he be blessed of the Lord who has not withdrawn his kindness to the living and to the dead. That is worship. That is praise to God in recognition that his steadfast loving kindness with all that she has experienced in the loss of her husband and her 2 sons and trudging through the desert and all the scorn and rumors that she experienced getting back to Bethlehem. All of that which she suffered in despair was glorified in the Lord's work by her simply praising him. So is worship important, church? Can you sit before the Lord and worship, and maybe that heals and frees your heart in ways that reading the Bible for 3 hours? Do you think worship can be powerful in the same way of reading the Bible? Yes. Can it go overboard and people idolatrize worship? Oh yeah. Go on YouTube and look up. Many churches do that. That's all the church is about. But do you think the importance of worship is expressed here? It breaks Naomi's despair. And if you're like, well, it doesn't really say that, Pastor Nick, and you're talking about all this literature stuff and how it just speaks and shows you, well, go to chapter 3, verse 1. What does Naomi do? She says, Mother Naomi said to Ruth, my daughter, shall I not seek security for you that it may be well with you? Was Naomi planning anything about the future before that? No. We don't see any indication that she's even thinking about the future. She's probably just trying to get from day to day. But the fact that the narrator puts that in there shows that despair has been broken. That doesn't mean all the pain is gone. And that doesn't mean that, she's not going to suffer the loss and sadness of her husband and her sons. And it doesn't bury it under this false pretense of, well, I'm worshiping God amidst all this suffering. Though he slay me, yet I will praise him. That is not a flippant thing. That pain, that suffering, that can stay for years. And if you have lost somebody that dear to you, you know what I am talking about. But the Lord, right? It's always but the Lord. Because that despair blocks your vision from everything. It doesn't let you see in the future. It doesn't even let you sometimes see what you're doing in the present. Have any of you been so down and so depressed in your thoughts or struggling so much that you're driving and all of a sudden you arrive at your destination, you can't even remember how you got there? Has that ever happened to anyone? That's a scary thing, right? Like, oh geez, there were 3 stop signs and a couple intersections with stoplights. I'm here and I'm alive. I don't think anyone else got in an accident. That's what despair can do to you. But it shows that God, in all his goodness and love that he is pouring out on Ruth and Naomi in this moment, is to love and care and to keep them secure in him. He is literally taking away any opportunity for them to work for themselves so that he can show his steadfast love to them. And you might say, well, Ruth went out and worked really hard. Yes, in faith, she worked really hard. But Boaz didn't presume upon her hard work and say, she'll be all right. She'll get enough by what she's doing. What did he say to the reapers after their lunch? He said, pull the stalks out and lay them down so that she will be able to reap enough. It was more than enough, of course. But think about that. God always gives you more than enough. He always provides in ways that make you wonder, wow, it's not even possible. How did this happen so fast? Verse 22 says, Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it is good, remember, my daughter, that you go out with his maids, so that others do not fall upon you in another field. What's the lesson here? Think about this. It's water, right? We drink it every day. I hope you do. If you don't, you need to work on that. But if you can put the slide back up, aside from this being fresh water, clean, that I can drink, and that being salt water that if you try to drink that, it just would be very bad, right? It's still the same substance. It's still water. So we have, in one instance, a substance that replenishes us and nourishes us, right? It's good for us. And in a different instance, in this case, this lighthouse, we have a water that is beating and beating upon that lighthouse. And it looks like a pretty clear day, right? That doesn't look like there's huge storm clouds on the horizon that's stirring the water up. So that might be a typical day. It might not. I don't know. But think about that for a second. How many times in your life, when the storm is raging and you're cowered in your lighthouse seeking refuge with the Lord, and then the sea's calm and everything's really nice and clear, and you step out on the deck and you see the sun in all of its glory, and you forget what the Lord has done. And you presume upon the grace that he gave you through that storm and forget what he has taught you, what he has given to you, what he has provided for you. That's what we see here with Ruth. Naomi, in her wisdom, and thank God for a wise mother-in-law, says, go out with the maids and do not fall upon another field. It's indicating, do not presume upon the grace that God has given you this day, Ruth. Don't think that God has given you all this amazing abundance today and just presume that if you go to another field tomorrow, he'll do the exact same thing with another guy. Trust in what the Lord has provided for you and use that well. Be faithful to what God has given to your hands to do. And do it all for the glory and excellence of his name, not for yourself. But if Ruth, think about this, if Ruth was a lesser woman without integrity, what's the standard human idea of what you would do? What would a capitalist think? Well, I got 30, 40 pounds here. If I go to the next field, maybe I can work double time. Maybe I'll just stay there all night and just do as much as I can and get maybe 50 pounds. And then maybe I could take that grain and sell it and make more money. And then and your brain starts thinking, well, what's happening in that scenario? You are thinking according to your own understanding and your own knowledge. Maybe to the understanding that the world and the culture has taught you. And you stop seeking refuge in the Lord. You're seeking refuge in your understanding. Yes, he helped you out of that jam, right? That difficult scenario, and you're like, oh, thank you, Jesus, for that. But I'm gonna roll on down the road and keep on hitting up this other stuff. And Naomi says, Ruth, stay. And so what does 23 say? So she stayed close. Remember, words are important, right? Close by the maids of Boaz in order to glean until the end of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest. I'm going to stop right there for a second because that last sentence feels like this is just like extra information. I don't even know what that means. But think about this. Ruth is faithful. She is not swayed by temptations or her emotions. She doesn't get caught up in all that God has given her and go, well, maybe he'll double this blessing if I go to another field because I'm taking another step of faith, right? Right? Isn't that what Christians say and think? Well, I'll take another big step. Like, this is going to be bigger, Jesus. Like, way bigger. So you need to double bless me, maybe triple bless me because I'm going to just go out on a limb and do this. And he's sitting there going, oh, kind of like Jack is right now, like, oh, geez, don't think that way. Like, this is not my plan. Like, you are presuming upon my grace. I've given you the man. And she takes that time and that counsel from Naomi, and she listens. It shows another character trait of Ruth's integrity. She obeys. That's really important in Hebrew culture. There's no word in the Hebrew language for obey. The only word that they use for obey that is translated into our versions as obey is the word shema, which literally means to listen and act, which is essentially what obey means, right? You listen to what you're told and you act upon what that person says. So Ruth listens and acts upon it. And for 2 to 3 months, she remains faithful to Naomi. In the culture today, if a young lady leaves the house, gets a good job, is well provided for, is she going to actually live with her parents? Or is she going to, after getting that job and is well provided for, go to live on her own? She'll move out, right? And that's normal, typically. The culture in Hebrew times is to be with your mother and father. Well, does Ruth have a mother and father? No. Who is Ruth's mother per se right now? Naomi. So does Ruth, after getting this great job, she's making lots of money, folks. I mean, she just made 2 weeks in a day. You know, like, this is amazing stuff. God has provided unbelievably. She stays. That's the last line. She lived with her mother-in-law. She does not go running out on town with all her newfound success, take up rent down the road from the field so that she can get to work early, or just roll out of bed and show up, however it be. She stays with her mother-in-law. What does that tell you about Ruth's character? What does that say about her faith? She does not move on from where the Lord has placed her until he moves her on. She does not presume on what God has given her. She faithfully and steadfastly serves in a way that honors the Lord and remains true to his character. How many of you can say the same? How many of you have that character development? To not get caught up in all the discussion of the day, to not get caught up in what people are saying and thinking and doing, to not be led astray, but to remain fixed and focused, knowing this is where my God has me, and this is what he is calling me to do. How many of you are faithful to rest and to trust in what God is doing in your life? How many of you are faithful to remain steadfast and hopeful in what God has provided you with, in what God has shown you to do in your life? Because think about that. Naomi was deep in despair throughout the entire story up until this moment. And we can see that despair breaking and being thrown away as we look forward to what she is going to do now in chapter 3. She takes a very active role. Trust me, when she lays out what Ruth needs to do, and you better come back next week to hear this, because you should be blown away. Because historically, what she tells Ruth to do is like, oh boy, this is interesting. Like, this is really interesting. But she takes an active role. And so recognizing, listen to this, and proclaiming two things. Recognizing and proclaiming God's steadfast faithfulness in your life allows truth to penetrate into your heart. If you choose to not speak up when people are lying, if you choose to not say the truth when somebody is clearly using words and lies to hurt others, even to yourself, you could be watching some news channel, and if you don't speak up and go, that's not right, for yourself, those lies have more power over you. And it is very, very important that in this day and age, and I'm not speaking politically right now, I'm speaking generally in every aspect of your life. But if you're hearing something that is not true, and you are part of that conversation, you need to bring God's truth into it, because it will dispel those lies and crush them. Because Satan's lies are really, really weak in the light of God's truth. But when you shroud it in darkness and silence, oh man, it's like a mountain that you can't even climb. It's like a mountain of sand that you just keep slipping down more and more. So proclaiming and recognizing God's steadfast love in all things brings truth into your life and dispels that darkness, dispels the lies, and crushes them where they are at. How many of you need to do that today when you go home? And it's not necessarily that you have to be watching the news or something. You should even do that in your quiet times, your study times. And even if you sound like a crazy person and you have roommates and you're speaking out loud, maybe you kind of just need to be more crazy so they can hear that truth. How many people in your lives are suffering from lies of the enemy and falling into despair? And it would be so easy for them to simply hear one truth of the Lord. It might shock them. How many of you, upon hearing something true from the Lord, puts you in a state of like deer in the headlights? And you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't even think of that. But what does that do? It starts cleaning your heart. It starts sanctifying your mind. And we all need that. Because the last thing that I want you all to remember today is simply this. You can work and serve in a church for your entire life and still not see near the amount of fruit that God can do in 1 hour of a day. Do you think that means God is powerful? If we have Ruth to show in what she gleaned in one day, that shows God's power, right? And how many of us want to just put our heads down and they're like, no, Pastor Nick, I'm going to serve this way. I'm going to do it faithfully for 30 years. I'm just going to keep my blinders on and plow the road until I get home to heaven. Well, okay, but what if the Lord was like, if you just look up for like 1 second, you could like see the mountains and everything that I want you to experience and to enjoy? Because God came for you to have joy, right? He came for you to experience joy, right? That's why the greeting is, blessed be in the name of the Lord, so that you would have joy and have it to the full, right? John 10:10. That's a pretty important verse for us. So if you are, nope, I'm just going to snowplow my way through life, and I'm going to stay right here until you move me, Lord. Well, he just wants you to look up. He doesn't have to move you too much. Just see what the Lord is calling you to do. He can work harder in your life in one moment than you can work an entire lifetime. And a lot of times we're like, no, Jesus, that's really great and all. We love that you died for us, but now I'm going to prove myself to you so that you can accept me because I'm a really good Christian. Like, I really love you so much. And so I'm going to obey everything that the Old Testament says. And I know you came to abolish the law, but I'm going to obey it anyways just to be super, super special and good. And then I'm going to do everything in service and go and live a missionary life 3 weeks out of the year for you. And I'm going to do it just for you, Jesus. And you're going to love me so much. You really are. And he's like, but daughter and son, you don't have to do anything. All of Ruth's hard work in the field was not to gain favor. She did it because she was called to do it. How do we know she was called? Because what foreigner gets up and just goes out to start working without a command to do it? She asked permission in loving respect towards Naomi, but gets up on her own volition and goes and works and does it to serve Naomi, to serve herself in unselfish ways, because that was the character that God had given her, and she was living it out. She did not presume on the grace of God. She lived according by faith. She did not presume on Boaz and just sit down and think, well, they're just throwing the sheaves out for me now. I guess I'll just wait until they're all done, and I'll just gather them up and bring them home and do it really quick at home with Naomi and get her to help me because she's just sitting there doing nothing. Do not presume upon the Lord. Recognize his truth and proclaim it to yourself, to your family, to your friends, to your coworkers, to people you don't even know, to the person that you see at Hobby Lobby and their face is so dark in a shadow. You're like, man, this person really needs help. Step up and proclaim that. What's an easy way to do that? Can I just pray for you? I guarantee you, unless they're like a super uber religious person, if you say that to a total stranger, they would be like, yeah, sure. I know that because we've got people in this room that have done that to total strangers, and they always say yes. Of course, the super religious would be like, your prayers are probably not going to be good enough for me, so no. But if you say, I would love to just pray for you right now, watch the light of God shine upon that person. You will see it change. You really will. And how many of us can minister much better by just praying for somebody in a moment versus trying to explain to them, all the things they need in Jesus? Because at that moment, when that person has that shadow in their face, that is deep and dark oppression from the enemy. Your power is really not going to change anything. It's not going to do anything for that person. What will change is when you step aside and pray to the God of heaven, the Lord of hosts, God Almighty, to intervene in this person's life in a way that you don't even know, but he does. And it changes that person immediately in their heart, and they go away smiling. Like, have you ever seen somebody that's scowling and then you do something like that? Or you just do a little act of service and all of a sudden they're like skipping through the fields of flowers? It is amazing. We can laugh at that. It is a silly depiction, but it's true. That is what God's love does. And it's not just a love that comes and goes. It's a love that stays forever. It's a love that called to Abraham and said, I'm going to bless you. And he immediately disobeys. He calls to Jacob and it pulls a whole nation out of the darkness of Egypt. And it calls each and every one of you to stop trying to work for your life. To stop trying to figure out a way that's going to be the best practice for your routine every day. And start giving yourself over to the joy of the Lord that is your strength, so that you may have life, have it abundantly, and share it with those that are in need. That is what you are called to do. Each and every one of you, and wherever you are placed. I'll pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for this time and the grace that you have given to us to hear from your word. I thank you, Jesus, for the beauty of the story of Ruth and Naomi and Boaz, for the faithfulness that you demonstrate and show to each and every one of them throughout the book. Thank you, Jesus, for not leaving us alone in our demise, in our despair, in our depression, and for not leaving us alone, Lord Jesus, even when things are going well, because we always stumble and fall. And so you're not running after us, Lord, when we're stumbling and falling. You're literally next to us, holding our hand to keep us from falling flat on our face. And I ask, Jesus, that you would please move each and every one of our hearts to have deeper compassion for those that are suffering in this city, to have greater love, to overlook all the weird things that we see, and to love the person that you are calling out of darkness. The family, Lord. I pray for the events that we have planned as a church, that you would allow those to minister to the hearts of the lost, to lead them, Lord Jesus, to the light of your countenance, to understand your salvation is for all people. Because the ones that receive your salvation have been called by you. So please, Jesus, help us to live in a way that testifies about your love and grace in our lives. And it explains it, Lord, through our actions. Help us to listen and to do according to your word, God. Amen.
Thank you so much for watching Petra Bible Church Bozeman. We will have a new sermon uploaded each week for both English and Spanish services. And remember, hit like and subscribe. Thank you, and God bless.